All right, so let's get this styled. We can see here, this is my folder. This is the SP or SPHPF, so style PHP form. I'm going to create a new folder in here. This is just good organization that I've always done that helps me out, and I'm going to call it CSS. And I'm going to create another folder and call it images because that's where I'm going to put my pictures. Now, let's see here. So let's create the CSS file that we're going to hook up to this HTML file. So I'm in here, I'm just going to do file new. Whatever type of text editor that you're using, it should let you do that. So I'm going to do file new, I'm just going to type something in here so I can save it. Control S, I'm going to save it inside of the CSS folder. And I'll just call it css.css. You can call it whatever you want, just make sure that you have the CSS extension, Cascading Style Sheets. All right, erase that. So I'm going to come over here and I have to link it. So I'm going to use that using a link tag, rel equals style sheet, type equals text slash CSS, href equals, and now I got to tell the code where the CSS sheet is. Well, right, that file that I'm editing right now is right here. So this CSS file is in a folder called CSS, and then that's called css.css. So I have to say go into the folder called CSS and link the file called css.css. And usually what I'll do, this is just me, I'll hurry and style something like background color is black just to make sure that it hooked up because I don't want to spend forever doing things and then I find out that I did something wrong. Okay, cool. So I got a black background so I know that it's hooked up correctly. So I can just get rid of that because I know it's working. Okay. So I got to come in here and I got to add some things to my HTML so I can call these elements with my CSS. Now I'm going to add some now. I may forget some and add some later, but don't worry, I'll explain what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So first thing I'm going to do is give this form an ID of F. That allows us to just hone in to this form and then style all the things that are inside this inside of this form. Okay, the next thing I got to do, well, we'll just kind of do it as we do it, I guess. So let's take a look. So this is what we have. The first section I want to, the first section that I'm going to mess with is this font. You know, these fonts of these header tags. I don't really like them. So I want to go grab a font that I think looks a little bit better. And there's a really quick way to do that. I'm going to go to Google Fonts. So I like one called Oxygen. So I'm just going to Control F and it doesn't exist. Maybe I have to load some things here. I'm just scrolling down to get it to see if maybe, there we go. It just had to load. So when you find the font that you like, you're going to mouse over it and you're going to come to this little button here. It says Quick Use. I'm going to click on that. And it's going to ask me what type of the font that I want to use. Well, I'll just use bold. I don't really care about the normal. And then it'll tell you over here how much it'll mess with your page. We're totally okay. Doesn't really do hardly anything. So once I picked what I want, I come down here and I have to add the import to the sheet. So this would be if I want to import it using HTML, which I don't want to do. I'm just going to do it with CSS. So I'm going to do this at import. So I got to put that inside of my CSS file. So I copy that, come over here, and just throw it in there. What that's doing is it's importing this font so I can use it. And then if I come down here a little bit more, it'll say what I need to type out in order to use it. And so that's what I'm going to use right here. So we'll come back here, and I'm going to say in the form with the ID of F, this pound sign means ID. So in the form with the ID of F is what I'm saying here. All the H2 tags inside of that form with the ID of F, I'm going to give them the font family of Oxygen. So that's all I'm doing there. And Oxygen will now work because I've embedded Oxygen inside of my page. Google Font makes it a little bit easier because without this, you have to get the actual font file, and then you have to kind of declare, it's kind of like a variable inside of CSS to get it to work and everything. So Google Fonts just kind of makes it a lot easier for us, which is nice. So I've embedded the font file, and then I've said, okay, inside of the form of F, all the H2 tags inside of that form with the ID of F, give them an Oxygen font. Okay, and then there we go. It changed all of them. It's the beauty of CSS. It's with just a little bit of code, you can change a lot of the things on your page, which is nice. Another thing I want to do real quick is I'm going to go and Google repeatable backgrounds. These are pretty cool. I'll just go to a couple of these sites. No, don't like that one. I just want kind of a, something like this, like a really just light background. Now, the cool thing about these is once you repeat these on the page, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute, it looks like it's supposed to be there. So if I wanted this, you can see that it takes just this little small picture and it repeats it, and then it actually looks like a full background, which is really cool. So these are pretty cool. And the cool thing here is you can click on the one you want, and it'll show you right here what it's going to look like. It gives you an idea. So I don't want anything too crazy. It's just something a little subtle. Shouldn't be taking this long. Yeah, that's good. So they give you the direct link to it. So I'm going to copy that, come over here, paste it, and then it'll come up, and I'm just going to right click it and save the image. So now I'm going to go back into my forms folder, and I'll go into images because that's where I'm going to put all my pictures, and I'm going to call this BG for background. Hit save. So now if I come to my project folder, if I go inside of images, there's this background picture. So now I'm going to put that on the page. So to do that, you can style the body, which is basically the whole page. And I'm going to do background-image URL. Now here's where it gets kind of tricky. Because I'm editing this CSS file, I have to say where this background picture is in relation to the CSS file. So the CSS file is in here. It's inside of CSS. Well, there's no other folders. So what I have to tell it to do is jump out of that folder by doing .. That's what that means. The .. says, okay, go up a folder to the form folder, then go inside of images, and then open up a page or use this background called bg.png. So just be aware of that. We'll be doing that a lot actually when we start using more pictures. So let's head back over here and see if it worked. Okay, there we go. So now we got that repeating background image, which looks pretty cool. Okay, so I hope you're ready to write a ton of CSS because we're going to style the heck out of this. So next thing we're going to do is I'm going to give okay, we got the ID there. We styled the H2. So I got to give this a name so I can style these. So I'm going to give this a class of N for name. And then I'm going to give this a class of E for email. And then I'll give this a class for P for phone number. These classes, just think of them as kind of labels, or we're just giving these names so we can go into the CSS and call them and do something to them. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we do this. So we're inside the form with an ID of F, and then we're going to be styling, we'll do this one first, the input box with the class of N. So we go to the form with the ID of F, and then we style the tag, the input box with the class of N. So you can see IDs use the pound sign, and class uses period. The way I remember these is just IDs are usually numbers, so it makes sense that it uses the number sign here. And then like class and periods, you just think of school. So, what do you have for period 4? Oh, I have science class or web design class, whatever. So that's how I remember those. So we're just going to start styling this, and you'll just start seeing things happen. So the first thing we want to do is give this a background. We're going to give it a background picture. Well, how do we find pictures? Well, .. because we have to get out of the CSS folder. We get out of it, and then we go inside of images. So images / now we have a problem because we don't have a picture. Now, I've already grabbed some pictures, so I'm going to just use those. I have to go into a folder here that I have. Let's see here. Okay, so all these pictures here I'm just going to use. And we'll talk about them in a minute. But I've already kind of found the pictures that I want to use, so I'm just going to use those. So throw them in there. So for this one, I'm going to use the background picture of person. So I'm going to use that. So person.png. It's just a little guy, his head here, and this has a transparent background, so you won't be able to see anything behind him. Now, because I'm just using background and not background-image or background-color, I can define multiple things in one line. And so the other thing I'm going to define is no repeat. I don't want this background to repeat. Where we can see with this one, it's repeating. I could come over here and say no dash repeat, and then it would only show up once. Or maybe not even once. But yeah. So we definitely want that to repeat so we can see what's going on there. Okay. So you can see a little bit of what's going on. Let's try to have kind of both of them here. All right, so background URL images person. Well, we can see the person back there. He's kind of hanging out, but he's way too big. So the first thing we can do here is background dash size. And I'm going to want him to be 25 pixels. All right, he's a lot smaller now. So the background dash size, pretty sure when you only put in one, it's basically the height and width are now 25 pixels. Or actually more likely that, it's more likely that this defines, I'm pretty sure this is the width, and then it just kind of keeps everything constrained, and so it doesn't skew. So it doesn't get really fat or really small or big. It just stays the same, constrains the proportions. All right, so next thing is background dash position. And we want this to be 5, 5. So that's going to say 5 from the left and 5 from the top. So it's 5 pixels there and 5 pixels there. You can see that it kind of went away. Now we have a problem, is we can't really see him. He's getting cut off by the box. So we need to make the actual box a little bit bigger, and we can do that with padding. And the way padding works is I just think of it as a clock. It starts at the top, goes to the right, goes to the bottom, and goes to the left, just like it goes clockwise. But I remember that it always starts at noon, just like, a clock usually kind of seems like a clock starts at noon. So anyways, so I'm kind of blabbing on there because the first thing you're going to define is the top padding, which is 10 pixels. And then you're going to define the right padding. I don't want any to the right. So the padding up here will be 10 pixels. To the right, there's nothing because it's already wide enough. I'm good with that. The next one you define is the bottom. I want another 10 pixels for the bottom. And then I want 40 pixels for the left. Let's see what that does. Okay. So it made the box a lot bigger. So I got 10 pixel padding there, no for the right, 10 for the bottom, and then I got a full 40 to the left. And what that did is pushed full name over. Because if I didn't do that, you can see that full name is over the guys over that picture, which I don't want. I want full name to be over 40 pixels. Okay, and then I want this to be indented a little bit, so I can do that with margin. It works the exact same way as padding. So 0 on the top, 0 on the right, 0 on the bottom, 20 pixels from the left. So the main difference between padding and margin here is padding is inside the box. So inside of this text box, I got 10, 10, and 40. So 10 here, 10 there, and 40 there. But margin is outside. So I get 0, 0, 0, and then 40 pixels here. So that's really the main difference there. Another thing I can do is I can set the appearance to be none. If that doesn't do anything, then sometimes you have to do these prefixes. Chrome's a WebKit browser, so you'd have to do it like that. Or if you wanted to do Internet Explorer, it's MSN and so forth. But to be honest, I don't think I really need to do that with this. But one thing I do want to do is add a border solid. 1 pixel should be good. So that's just going to put a border around that. So now when people type, it looks okay. Another thing is if I want to make this wider or taller, I can. So I can define a width of 200 pixels. That made it just a little bit wider. So I can do that if I want. So I'm good for now. Actually, another thing I probably could do if I wanted is font-family. Actually, let's just copy this line. I should be able to make it so the font that I type uses that font as well. Yeah. So now the placeholder you can see is in that font, and also the text that I type is in that font as well. So that just kind of matches it. Okay, so that is for the name. Now, another thing I want to do is when I go pound, so inside the form with the ID of F, with the element of the class of N, when I focus on that, I want a little change to happen. So border 2 pixels, solid. So right now I have a solid border of 1 pixel, but when I focus in on this, and you'll see what I mean by that in a minute, we'll get a border of 2 pixels. We'll get a little subtle change there. So when I click on it, you can see that the border gets a little bit bigger. And then when I click out, it gets smaller, bigger, smaller. So that's what focus does. Focus is when you select this element. When you select something, the focus is now on it. So when I select that and the focus is on there, then I get that little thing around. I don't know about that blue thing though. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. The appearance none may get rid of that. No, it doesn't. So I don't know for now. That may just be a Chrome thing. But anyways, so that's how we're kind of slowly styling our text boxes here. All right, so now the email and the phone are going to be really, really similar. So I'm just going to copy and paste these. Copy and paste it. We'll just do one for now because, so by the way, I copied everything, the focus, those two. The form with the ID of F and then class N and then the focus. So all I got to do is change this now to email. And we had, remember if we come back here, we had it with class of E. And this is class of P, which we'll get into in a minute. But class E, so period, class E. The images that I'm going to use for this one is obviously going to be email.png. So all I got to do is throw that in there. So email.png. The background stuff should be really close to the same. If not, we can change it. We can tweak it a little bit. And then when I focus inside of the E, I want border 2 pixels solid. So again, that's kind of the cool thing about CSS is you can play around with stuff, get it to where you want it, and then you just copy and paste the styles, and boom, you've just styled another thing, which is pretty nice. Okay, let's see here. So the next thing is we'll just do the same thing with the P one. Throw that in there again. So this is going to be for the phone number. But instead of using email or person, we're going to use phone.png. So phone. And we change that to the class of P. I know that sounds really gross. And then we got the class of P focus. That should be pretty good. All right. Cool. So we've styled those and they've done what we need them to do. Okay. So that is for those. Now we're going to move on to these checkboxes. So what we want to do and what we want to have happen is we want to have where we click in the text, it'll check. And also we want to just get rid of these checkboxes and we want to put in our own. Now what you'll need to do for this is you'll need to create something like this. So I went into Photoshop and I created this tall vertical picture that has what I want my checkbox to look like, what I want my checkbox to look like when it's checked, and then my radio button, what I want it to look like, and then what I want it to look like when it's filled in. So you need these 4 states: the checkbox, the checked checkbox, I can't say that for some reason, and then the radio button, and then the selected radio button. Doesn't really matter how much space is in between because you can tweak that number later. But the one thing that you really kind of want to make sure is just try to make sure that the boxes, the 2 boxes here are the same width and same height. And then same with the circle. The circle is just basically what you'd want to do is draw the circle and then copy and paste it onto another layer. I don't know if I have, the PNG. I did somewhere. Actually, let me look in here real quick. Yeah, I'll just show you just to give you an idea of what I did. So I did use rulers, and what I did is I just went to view, went to rulers, and then that showed these, and then I just kind of clicked and dragged these out just to kind of help me space them the way they should be spaced. But really you want them to have the same width and about the same height, and then just make sure there's some space in between. And once you do that, you'll have what you need. And then I would you definitely need to go to the layers here and get rid of the background so you can save it as a transparent background. So you do need to save, when you do a save as, make sure you save it as a PNG, because PNGs support transparent backgrounds. If you don't and you save it as a JPEG, this area in here, the transparent area, will be white. And that won't matter if you do a white background, but right here, I got this grayish background, so it just looked really bad. So just make sure there's no background, make sure you save it as a PNG, but you just need those 4 states: the checkbox, the checked checkbox, the radio button, and then the filled in radio button. And yes, you could separate these if you wanted to. You could just have the checkboxes be in one picture and then the radio buttons be in the other, but this is just how I did it. Okay, so be aware of that. Okay, let's kill that. Hop back into our form. So now we need to start styling these checkboxes. So I'm going to head back to my HTML. Okay, so we're good with these. So now we're right in here. Now this is where we need to start talking a little bit about the label. So I'm going to give these IDs, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm asking them where they're going to eat. So I'll call it eat1. I'll copy this and I'll throw this in the other input tags. It doesn't matter what order these attributes are in. So don't worry if you put the ID after the type or type before the ID, it really doesn't matter. Okay, so this will be eat2 and this will be eat3. Okay, and then I got to come into these labels and I just got to say this is a label for the element with the ID of E1. So this is kind of how I'm hooking them together. So this is a label for, now when I say element, I mean tags. Though this is a label for the element with the ID of E2. And this is an element for, or this is a label for the element with the ID of E3. That's a great convention too, by the way. Now, lo and behold, now when I click on the label, it tied those two together. It said, all right, this is a label for the input with the ID of E1. So now it knows when I click on the label, it can check it as well. So it just kind of adds that functionality to it. So that's kind of a cool thing to know there with the checkboxes. All right, now that I've given this an ID as well, I can go in there and style these things. So we're going to hop in here, go down here to the bottom, hit enter a couple times. So now we're going to style, we're going to go inside of the form with the ID of F, and we're going to style all the input tags with the attribute of type equals checkbox. So that's what that means. Now I could say, I could come in here and be like, well, we're going to style E1. We're going to style the ID of E1 inside of the form F, but the problem is we want to style it all in one shot. So this is just a way of saying, okay, style all the input, because the problem with the input is there's type equals checkbox, there's type equals radio, type equals text, type equals number, type equals color. I mean, there's a ton of different types. So if I style all the input tags and that's it, it's going to style all of this, all of this, all of this. It's going to style a lot of the stuff on the page that we don't want it to. So we have to use this to say style all the input boxes with the type of with the type attribute equals to checkbox, which is right in here. So that's what we're saying there. So the first thing that we want to do with that is I want to make them a little bit bigger. So I'm going to say width of 30 pixels, height of 30 pixels. Now, different browsers handle this different ways. If I throw this in Firefox, I want to say this doesn't do it. Oops, I don't want to run the CSS, I want to run the HTML in Firefox. So yeah, you can see that Firefox is like, nah, I'm not playing that game, I'm not making them any bigger. But it did make the box around them bigger. So the space is bigger, but the box itself didn't get bigger, where in Chrome they did. So browsers handle this stuff a little bit differently, but once we give it the custom checkbox, it shouldn't matter. It should work fine in all the different browsers. So just be aware of that. Opacity, which is the see-throughness of it, we're setting to 0. We just want it to go away. So the checkboxes are now gone. And we want that because we want to be able to put in our own. Right? Right. Okay, so we're good there. Now we're going to style the form with the ID of F, and we're going to go inside of the input with the type equal to checkbox. And we're going to style the label as well. So the way I understand this is when you use the plus sign here, you're saying, okay, we're going to style the checkboxes, and we're going to style the element label that should be right next to it, which it is. So we have the checkbox here, and then right next to it is the label tag. So this is just saying we're going to style the checkboxes and the label. Okay, so what we're going to do is, this is where we're going to start putting in the background picture that we created. So background URL // go into images and then grab icon.png, and we're going to not repeat this picture. So again, just like we've done before, we're inside of here because we're styling the CSS file. We're saying get the heck out of that folder, go up one, open images, and then load icons.png, icons.png. So let's see what this looks like. There they are, but they're huge. That's the top of the box. So obviously we got to start telling it to do some more things. So background position, we're going to say be at the 0 pixels from the top or left. I'm not sure which one. Well, we can find out real quick. Nope, we can't. Pretty sure that's saying 0 from the left, 0 from the top. I could be wrong, but we're telling it that's where we want it to be. Now, it's still way too big to really see what we're doing here, so we need to shrink it down. And I've already kind of played around with this, and I've found that 40 pixels wide and 140 tall is good. So we're getting there. We're slowly getting there. So we can see that the background size has shrunk it down to a manageable size. This is about how big we want it to be. The background position shot it right up in the corner. Now we want to throw in some padding. So we'll do 5 pixels from the top. 0 from the right, 5 from the bottom, and then 45 from the left. So we're kind of doing the similar thing to what we did, where is it? Here. Where we wanted the 40 pixel padding here, we kind of want the same thing. We want the 40 pixel padding here to shoot these names over to the right. So that's basically kind of what we're doing there. So now we got that 45 pixels of space right there, and it shot those over. And then we got 5 pixels of padding here. Here to comment out in CSS, it's just slash asterisk asterisk slash. So the 5 pixels gives us some room here on top. The 5 pixels gives us some room on bottom, so it kind of makes everything bigger so we can see the full square. And then the 45 shoots the text over to the right. Gives it a 45 pixel padding to the left. So a 45 pixel padding, that shoots all that stuff over. If you're not really sure what this stuff does as you're playing around with it, just tweak these numbers, and that'll usually give you a good idea of what's going on. Okay, the next part is I want to shoot this whole thing over, kind of over here. Kind of indent it a little bit like I did right here. Right now it's indented a little too far. So I'm going to say margin left minus 20 pixels. In other words, instead of going, if I had a margin left of 20, it would go over this way 20 pixels. But because I'm doing negative 20, it's going to shoot it over this way 20 pixels. Okay, that looks good. Now, when I click on it, though, we're still not getting anything. But that's okay. We're slowly going to get there. Another thing is I want to grab that font family, keep using this font. I want Chuck E. Cheese, Chick-fil-A, all that stuff to use the same font. There we go. So it's looking a little bit better now. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this because we're going to style this stuff, but we need to use a pseudo class. If you're not sure what a pseudo class is, that's a pseudo class, the focus there. There's focus, there's hover, there's a bunch of them. So now we're going to say f input with the type checkbox. When we check that, that's another pseudo class, checked. What we're going to do is background position. And again, I've already kind of gone in here and tweaked with it until I found something that worked. So when we check the checkbox, we're going to shift the background position up negative 37 pixels. So this is the position from the top. So if I had 20 there, it would take this pixel and shoot it down 20 pixels. But I have negative 37. So what it's doing is because this picture right here is actually what's here. You just can't see these other three because they're hidden. So when I check this checkbox, when I check this, what it's going to do is it's going to shoot it up 37 pixels. It's going to take this picture, which I can only see this right now, and it's going to shoot it up 30 pixels, so this will now take its place. This will be right here, and this will actually be way up here, and it'll be hidden along with this one and this one. So we're just shifting the background position up 37 pixels because it's negative. If I had 37, it would shoot this down 37 pixels because this is how far it is from the top. And this is how far it is from the left. All right, so we're shooting it up 37 pixels. Okay, and also I'm going to change the color a little bit just so we can kind of see that it's selected. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So when I check this, okay, it took this picture and it shifted it up 37 pixels, which was enough to switch the picture to where it's checked. And then also 70, 70, 70, that color is this kind of, I don't know, grayish color. So this is the number you're going to need to play around with a little bit. Because if I do negative 39, you can see that the box shifted up a little bit, and I don't want it to move. So you're just going to play around with the number until basically when you check that, it just looks like it's checked and it didn't even move. That's what you want it to look like. Okay. And because I'm styling all the inputs with the type of checkbox with labels, it affects all of these and it works on all of them. And remember, because I have these labels, label 4, the element with the ID of E1, which is right here, that allows me to click on the text to make it check. Sweet. All right, so that's it. They work. They get checked, and I got the text going a little gray just to kind of show me more visually that they're checked. So that's it for the check boxes. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is the radio buttons. So we're going into the form with the ID of F. We're going to be styling the elements with, if we can grab it here, with type equals radio this time, not checkbox. Okay. Now I need to do something similar. Like right here, I made the width 30/30 and I hid the original checkboxes. I want to do something similar with this. So what I can do is I can actually just add the radio buttons to that styling. I can just do comma, the form with the ID of F, input, type equals radio. And what that does is it's going to style this, which is all the checkboxes, and it's going to style this, which is all the radio buttons. It's going to make them all a width of 30 by 30, and it's going to make them go invisible. So they're now gone. So now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to, sorry, I am kind of cheating. I do have notes here, just letting you know. Going to be totally up front, man. Label. So I'm doing basically the same thing I'm doing here. I got to throw in the background picture. I got to do a bunch of different things. So I'm just going to copy all this because this is going to be really similar and throw it in there. So I do want it to have the background image of icons. Okay, but the background position is going to be a little bit different because I don't want it to be this. I want it to be this. So I have to shift it up even more than that 37 that I did before, that negative 37. I need to shift it up even more. And again, I already kind of went in there and played around with it. 75 should make it happy. The background size should be the same. We're going to keep the padding the same because we want this text to move over. Okay, margin left, we're going to move it over a little bit like we did here. We shifted those over to the left, and the font, I want it to be Oxygen. So there we go. Good stuff. Now again, I had to play with this number because if I had it wrong, it's just going to look a little weird like that. It's showing both the unchecked and checked versions, which I don't want. So you just got to find that magic number that fits with the picture that you made. Okay, and we made that big picture shrink down. That's what the 4140 did. Okay, padding, the 5 pixels of padding. No on the right, another 5 on the bottom, and then the 45 pushed 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and 7 p.m. pushed it over. Margin negative 20 did the same thing it did here. Took all of that, pushed it over. Just to show you what I mean, we can make that 20, so that pushes it over way too far. I want it to be negative 20. Just indents it a little bit. And then the font family, We've already explained that. Changes the font. Okay, and now we're going to do something similar here. So now I'm going to style everything with the type of radio that's checked. And then what we want to do is when we check the radio box or the radio button, we want to shift this up even more. So whatever number that'll allow this to take that place. Again, I've already played with it. I found that -111 makes it happy. So we refresh, we click on it. We're having some issues. Oh, you know what? I don't think we did the ID thing. Nope, we didn't. So we have to do the same thing over here. So right here on the labels, we got to do the same thing. Yeah, because you can see I'm clicking on stuff. It only works when I click on the hidden the hidden radio buttons, which we don't want. We want it to work on the labels. So we got to do the same thing. We're coming over here. We're giving them IDs of, it doesn't really matter. I'll call it T for time. So we'll give it an ID of T1. We'll give this one an ID of T2. We'll give this one an ID of T3. And this is the label for T1. This is the label for T2. And then this is the label for T3. Okay, we should see some magic now, hopefully. We messed something up. Okay. So 5 looks okay. We got ID, type equals radio, name is time. Yep. Close the radio. Input ID equals T2. Type radio, name time, label for. We don't have a closing label. Oh, we got, what the heck? We erased something there. So 6 p.m. Close out the label. That was fun. Okay, and then we need a BR tag to get that down on the next line. Yeah, I must have erased that stuff as I was typing in things. You probably saw it. I didn't. Okay, so now it's happy. We can click on the radio button and have it happen, or we can click on the label. And it's shifting it the way it should. So, happy day. Okay, so the next thing we need to style is this drop down. So everything's looking good and styled and original. This still looks kind of boring and junky. So we will hop back into the CSS, come down here. Okay, and we are going to style what's in the form of with the ID of F, and we're going to form the select, or we're going to style the select tag. So we go into the form with the ID of F, and then it comes down here and it looks for the select tag. And that's what it's going to style. So we're going to do appearance none. You'll see what that does. That didn't do anything because, again, this is a WebKit browser, so we have to use these prefixes that we were talking about before that wasn't really doing much before. Just misspelled appearance there. But now you can see what it does. When I say WebKit appearance none, Chrome is a WebKit browser, so it got rid of that little, if you missed it, let me show you. So we have the little arrow here, a little bit of style type thing going on there, but when I say appearance none for the WebKit browsers, it gets rid of that. And there's really no space there, so it just kind of got rid of that. We got rid of that arrow because we're going to be adding our own. Now, just to make sure that that works on every browser, we have to use the prefix for every browser, and it gets really fun. So that's for Mozilla or Firefox. We have MS for IE. Just don't like that A, do I? Appearance. Okay, I might have misspelled something, so just for fun, I'm going to copy and paste that over. It may not recognize the MS. That may be what. Yeah, it just doesn't recognize it. That's fine. Okay, so moving on. Then we have O for Opera. None. And then we'll move on from there. So now when we open that in Chrome, it went away. When we open it in Firefox, not that. I always do that. We got to run the HTML, not the CSS. Okay, and it's gone there as well. So we're good. Okay, so now we're going to do background RGBA. What that stands for is red, green, blue, and alpha. Alpha is opacity, like how see-through something is. So I just give it all 150s. It's not, the number here for mine didn't really matter because I'm making this very opaque. And that's what that 0.1 is. And then I'm going to give it a background of / images. I'll show you this in a minute. Drop down .png. We don't want that to repeat. So you can see the shorthand. I just use the background and I can just define a ton of stuff. I defined a background color with an alpha of 0.1. 1 is completely like no see-through at all. And then 0 is so see-through it's invisible. So 0.1 is almost making it invisible. And then I'm saying use this background picture of drop down, which is right here. Drop down. Okay. And then that's it for now. Let's see what it does. Okay. Now it's okay, by the way, so you can see that it's kind of see-through. If I change that to 1, you can see that it's no longer see-through. And it's that 150, 150, 150 color. But I want it to be see-through, so 0.1 makes it almost completely gone. So we have a little bit of hint of that dark gray there. Now we can't see the background because I spelled it wrong. Drop down, not drop down. There it is. But it's really big, so we have to play around with it like we did with the other ones. So background dash size. Again, I played around, so you just play around with these till they get the size that you need it to be. Okay, that made it smaller. Then we got background position. And the position here is going to be 112 by 2. So what that does is it's going to shoot that picture 112 pixels over, and it's going to bring it down 2 pixels. So when that happens, we won't be able to see it anymore because it's over here. But that's okay because we're going to add some padding just like we've done before. So 10 on the top, 10 on the right, 10 on the bottom, and 10 on the left. Now I think there's a shorter way to do that. I think if I just go 10, 10, it'll do that as well. Yeah, so 10, 10 if you only have two values there, it knows to do the top. I guess probably the top and bottom will be that, and then, well, let's check, just because I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, so it knows to go 10, 10 on the top and bottom, and then 50 on the left and 50 on the right. So that's just another shorthand way of typing that out. Okay, and then the width will be 150, and this is going to make it so we can see the arrow, which was hanging out over there. And then I'm going to give this a border of solid 1 pixel, just so we can kind of see it a little bit better. Okay, and just like we did with the others, we're going to say when we focus on this, we're going to make the border a little bit bigger, just so we give a visual cue of it being selected. So when we focus on that, we're going to say border 2 pixels solid. So right now, when we select it, the border gets a little bit bigger. Now here's a fun thing. If I run this in this wretched browser called Internet Explorer that no one should ever use or even look at, it behaves bad. I come down here and it still has that arrow, even though I said appearance none. So there's this little tweak you can do. It's kind of weird, but you can do, okay, the form of ID of F, select 2 colons dash ms dash expand. So that's what it's called, and we're going to say display none. It's just one of those weird hacks you got to do to get this dang thing to work in IE. So now if you come down, it's gone, and you have the custom one that I put in there. But it's okay. Edge is going to replace that abomination. Okay, so now we're good with that. We've styled the drop down, we put in our own little arrow thing, and we put the border and all that. So we only have a few more things. We're going to style this field set. We're going to style the text area, and then we'll style these buttons. So next part is the field set. So form with the ID of F, and we're going to style the field set. So remember, the field set is this box going around. So by default, it just kind of is as wide as the page. We don't want that. I want an actual fixed width. So I'm going to say 400 pixels. So now as I move that, no matter what, it stays 400 pixels wide. And I'm going to give it a border. I like solid. Solid borders make me happy. Okay, so instead of that grayish, I want it to kind of match everything and give me this black border. So that's all we're going to do to the field set. We're going to style the legend now. So we go into the field set, and then we style the legends inside of that field set tag. I'm going to do the font family of Oxygen there because that just stands out really bad. So I'm just going to grab that real quick. There. Now I want it to be a little bit bigger, so font size will go 25 pixels. So I want it to basically kind of fit the same size as these headers here. And then I want this to kind of be a subheader. So I'm going to get in there. So I'm going to style this right here. So I'm going to go form of ID. This is the form, go into the field set, and then style all the H2 tags inside of the field set. So this is how you can kind of start narrowing down on what you want. So up here, I'm saying all the H2 tags inside the form. Well, this H2 tag isn't inside the form. It's inside of the field set. So that's how you can kind of pick individually and style things individually. So now I say go into the form, go into the field set, and then only style that H2 tag that's inside of the field set. And I'm just going to say font-size. We'll shrink that down a little bit more. So we just make it a little bit smaller than that. Okay, and now that we've done that, let's style the text area. So go into the form of F. We're going to style the text area. And just in case you forgot, this is the text area. And you can control this. Right now I can resize it. If you don't want people to be able to do that, you can turn that off. And I can't remember right off the top of my head how to do that, but I'll look it up if I don't have it in my notes, which I don't think I do. So we're going to say width of 350, height of 150. That's just going to make it big so people have a good area to type their stuff in. We're going to throw that font family in there just so it matches everything. Padding, we'll say 10 pixels. So what that does, so right now as I type, it's like right up against the edge. I don't really like that. I want to have some padding there. So when I refresh and start typing, I got the 10 pixel padding and then 10 pixel padding. Just looks a little bit better. So when I say padding 10 px, just like up here, it did the top and bottom and then the left and right. When you just say padding 10, that's 10 pixels all around. So 10 on the top, 10 on the right, 10 on the bottom. It's just that's a shorthand way of saying 10 pixels all around. And I'll give this a background color just because I don't really like that white. And I'm going to use RGBA again because I want it to be see-through. So again, it's going to be totally see-through, so this number that I'm putting in there isn't really a huge deal because it's going to be 0.2 opacity, which is really see-through. So we're basically just getting, I mean, we can totally see the background through there, but that's what I like, and that's what I want there. So then I want the font size to be a little bit bigger just so we can read it easier. So font size 15 pixels. We do want it to be smaller than this because we don't want it to kind of compete, but this was 18, so 15 looks good. So you're seeing just CSS is just making tweaks after tweak after tweak, and then after you've tweaked all this stuff, then okay, you have a site. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. You say, oh, I want it to do this. Well, you make it do that. I want it to do this. You make it do it, and you just kind of move on. All right, so just because I said I would, let's see. Sizable text area, turn off CSS. Okay, so it's resize none. So I can come over here and say resize none. So right now, you got this. You can kind of, there we go. Yeah, you can move it around, resize it as needed. But now that I said resize none, that went away, and now I can't. So you can turn that on and off depending on what you want with your design. Okay, so now I just need to style these buttons here. All right, so I'm going to style on the thing there. Now we're going to say input with the type equals submit, because that is the button with the type of submit. Okay, font family. We're just giving this Oxygen a lot of love. So now it shouldn't be that gross default font. It should be the Oxygen font, which is good. Font size, I'm going to up that a little bit, 15 pixels. Okay, a little bit bigger, easier to read. Border none, because I'm going to give it its own border here in a minute. So that just kind of gets rid of this gross 3D thing that was created in 95. Okay, another one that's kind of cool is this pointer. It's a cursor pointer. Right now, if I mouse over this, it doesn't do anything, but now that I gave this a cursor pointer, it gives me the little hand icon letting me know that I can click on it. That's just kind of another cool visual cue you can do. Now, I don't know if I really need to do this. We'll see. Appearance, none. Do WebKit. Appearance, none. Yeah, it didn't really do much, so I'm not going to worry about doing the appearance here on the buttons. So we'll do border radius. Oops. Border dash radius. We'll give it a radius of 7 pixels. Well, we probably need to give it a border. No. Interesting. Well, we'll keep going. All right, so padding, 10 on the top and bottom, 15 on the left and right. Just going to give more space with the button there. Okay. And then margin, we just want to say nothing on the top. But this time we're going to give it like a 10 pixel margin on the right, nothing on the bottom, and then 5 on the left. Just because we want these two buttons to kind of have some space in between each other. Okay. Actually, I don't know. I'm going to see what happens when I give it solid 1. I think we're going to want that, to be honest. Yeah. So now we can actually see the border radius. That makes these curved buttons, these curved edges. That's amazing, actually, because back in the day, to do a curved button like that, you had to do like all kinds of weird stuff. You had to do image swapping, and it just got a little nuts. Okay, let's see here. It's kind of, I don't know, let's do 5. Let's see what that does. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. And then actually, I'm going to do a margin 10 on the top because I want the button to have some space in between there. Okay, so we did the button. I like that. I want the reset button to have the exact same thing. So type equals reset. Oops. So go to the form F, and then the input of type equals reset inside of that form, style it the same way. So now we got both buttons doing their thing. Okay, now I'm going to copy this because I want the hover pseudo class. So when I hover over these buttons, we got to tell it what to do. And I could do something easy as just border solid 2 pixels. So when I mouse over these, the border gets a little bit bigger, just like I've been doing with everything else. Now, if I want to go a little crazy here, I can use, it's been a while since I've used this, so if I hose it, I'll look it up. But you can do transition, and this is a way to get a little animation onto your rollovers. I can do transition. I'm going to transition the width, and I'm going to do it in 0.5 seconds. We'll see if this works. If not, we'll tweak some stuff. So we'll go 200 pixels. Nope. So I think I have to define the width beforehand. So width of, let's go 100. There we go. So I've defined the width for these buttons as 100 pixels. So they're both the same. And then I've said, okay, add a transition on the property of width and have it last a half a second. And so when I mouse, so now it's loaded into the CSS that when the width of this changes, when the width of these elements change, you're going to do a transition, or in other words, an animation. So when I mouse over this, it's going to change the width to 200. Well, it knows, okay, we have an animation stored in here that we need to do, and it's going to take us 0.5 seconds, and we're going to animate the width. So that actually gets pretty big, so I could say maybe 125. Usually these type of animations, you want them to be kind of subtle. Just kind of mouse over, it gets a little bit bigger, and usually you want it to be a little bit quicker too, to be honest. A little poppier, if that's a word. But yeah. Now you can see that it grows and then boom, the border happens. So I could set up another one and I could say animate the border as well and do that in 0.3 seconds. That should work. Maybe not. Sorry, I gotta look this up really quick. Because it's either you can't or I'm doing it wrong, and it's probably I'm doing it wrong. Let's see here. How do you do both? There we go. So, oh, I just got the comma in the wrong spot. So width, 0.3 seconds, comma, border, 0.3 seconds. That should hopefully work. Who knows? We'll see. Refresh. Yeah. Doesn't seem to be working that good. Let's try something else. You can also transition the background color. So if I say background dash color, we'll just say gray for now. And we say here that we want to animate that as well. Background dash color, we'll do that in 0.3 seconds. Then come over here and say background dash color. Let's make it, I don't know, it's gray. Let's change it to white. Yeah, for some reason that border just isn't animated. I guess the borders don't animate, but that's fine. So you can also do color fade in and out kind of a thing. So really anything, almost anything that CSS can control, you can animate with these transitions, which is slick. Happy day stuff. Okay, but I don't really like that. I'll get rid of that. The border isn't even working, so we'll get rid of that. We'll just do the width for now. Don't care about the background color there, but the border I'm fine with. Hey, go away, gray. All right, so now the width is just doing its thing, which I'm totally cool with. Okay, so that's it for the styling. We now have this form completely styled. It looks completely different than when it did before. And it does all of the different cues that we wanted. All of them work. So the next thing we got to do is we got to hook this up to a PHP page that will actually take this information that we put and email it to someone. So that's what we'll do in the next video. See you later, guys.